Yeah, well, that's like saying you're grateful that the sun came up.
Yeah.
Of course Aubrey's gonna be here, right?
Flat tire, but
Really?
yeah.
You got a flat tire?
No, built
What-
it up.
One of those days.
I know it's a little.
Pumped it up and just came to the
Yeah,
office.
see what happens when I go out there.
He has faith that it'll still be
Yeah.
aired up. Okay, well,
Yeah, what if it's still side of the road? by the way?
Yeah.
all right, well. So this morning, I think on Tuesdays, we talked about listing presentation, right?
But yeah,
Okay, a little bit. Well, so let's talk a little bit about that. You know, there's so much that could be discussed about the listing presentation or the listing conversation. You could literally do a multi-day clinic on the various parts of the listing presentation. But I think about going back to June of last year. I can't believe we're coming up on a year because we are now in May, right?
Yeah.
It's almost a year since we saw a very dramatic what in the market? Very dramatic shift. And what caused that shift? Interest rates. Interest rates went up dramatically in such a short period of time. You know, Aubrey, I've been in the business for 30 years this coming July, and I've never seen interest rates change as quickly as they did, as much as they did. And obviously that dynamic had a very significant impact on the marketplace. Did the market, did it go up or go down?
The inventory or,
Inventory, pricing, what happened?
oh, yeah. Pricing went down.
Pricing's down.
Inventory shot at the end of the year,
Uh-huh.
but I think at the beginning of it, it kind of came to a streak halt.
Mhm.
So,
Yep, it did. And what's happening right now? What are we seeing things?
Starting to see a pickup actually.
Yeah, what we see are these it's like there's a stratification and you see like these, like it's like a river. You see the water moving at different rates, different currents, right? And you see these eddies or these pools, and then there's massive movement and then just some slight movement. And that's the sort of market we're in. That sort of market creates what for buyers and sellers?
Just fear.
Yeah, uncertainty, which leads to what?
Fear.
To fear. Yes or yes?
Yeah.
yes.
Again, that's the sort of market that we are in. And I don't see that changing for quite some time because interest rates are not going to go down dramatically anytime soon. And, you know, for a couple of years, did buyers and sellers get used to historically low interest rates?
Yes.
Right? And what sort of market did that create? Was it a buyer's market or a seller's market?
So,
Yeah, it was really a seller's market, although it was great for buyers because they had historically low what?
rates.
Historically low rates. And now we're in a market where rates are not historically low, but they're not historically what either. They're not historically high. The challenge is that people don't have what? One of the most operative words when it comes to leadership and leading people to a place that they want to be. They don't have the right, it starts with a P, perspective, right? Perspective. And so I talked a little bit about this yesterday in terms of what great leadership does. Great leadership creates certainty. I'm going to say that again. Great leadership creates certainty for people. And right now we're in a sort of market that has created a lot of what for people? A lot of uncertainty. And so even more so today than say a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you as a leader, are you less important or more important in today's market?
More important.
You're more important. Why? Because there's a lot more what? Uncertainty. And it's not just that buyers are uncertain, sellers are uncertain as well. There's just a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. Now, does that mean that homes can't get sold?
No.
And of course, the answer is no. Does it mean that buyers won't buy homes? And the answer, of course, is what? No, because we know that homes are still being listed and still being sold. But it's really about, there are thousands of agents in the marketplace, and there are going to be thousands of homes sold this year. It's not a question of whether there are going to be agents or there are going to be homes that are going to be listed and sold. The question is, how many of those transactions are you going to participate in? Yes or yes?
Yes.
That's really the question. And so I just think about, okay, what do we need to do? Well, as real estate agents, as leaders, we need to separate ourselves from the competition. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a powerful what? Message. Yes, that's it. It's to have a powerful message. You don't need, you shout to the top of your voice on the rooftops. That's the answer. We have to have a powerful message, because especially in uncertain times, people need to hear certain powerful messages. Yes or yes?
Yes.
And who's going to do that? You're going to let the national media do that, or the local media do that, or leave it up to your competition that by in large part, gang, they're not professional. Yes or yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they are not professional. So it's up to you then to bring a powerful message to the marketplace. Well, what is that powerful message? Well, it has to do with it. Look, everything's going to be okay. It is going to be okay. If you want to list a home in today's market, can you get it sold?
Yes.
Yeah. If you want to buy a home in today's market, can you get a great home for a great price?
Yes.
And the answer is yes. And can you still get it at a great interest rate? And the answer is yes, historically speaking. And the great news is you can also get a seller who's willing to contribute to the cost of your mortgage and to buy down the what? The rate. So there are all sorts of options. But I just, in terms of in the context of the listing presentation and listing homes, one of the most important conversations that we can have today that we weren't having a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago is the pricing strategy. So I just want to cover that with you because I can tell you that in today's marketplace, that is a strategy and a message that is very, very relevant. See, in a historic market, a normal market, an average market, the pricing strategy was something that was very important. But in a market like we were in a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we didn't need a pricing strategy. Your pricing strategy was get a listing, and the market would take care of everything else. Because when you had a listing, no matter what you priced it at, in most cases, what was going to happen? It was not only going to sell, but it was going to sell for what? It's going to sell for more because you're going to get multiple what? Yeah, multiple offers. Now, it's not to say that we can't get multiple offers in today's market, because are we seeing some of that?
Yes.
We are. We are definitely seeing some of that. But are we seeing that the process of pricing is more difficult today than it was a year ago? Right. Because we know that there is a shift and we're seeing prices fall. We're seeing inventories in some cases increase depending upon the price strata. We're also seeing the fact that there is uncertainty on the part of buyers in terms of what is a good deal, and the fact that there is uncertainty in terms of the cost for their home, the cost of the mortgage to get the home. But then we're also seeing that uncertainty with the sellers. Well, enter you. You can either come in with a message of uncertainty and, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do or what to say, or you can come in with a message of, I know exactly what to do and I know exactly what to say because I have a set of systems and tools and strategies that we follow at Everest, that I know that no matter what's happening in the marketplace, I can bring those systems and tools and strategies to you to address the challenges that we face in any market, including this market. See, I don't believe that today's market is a buyer's market or a seller's market. I believe it's an agent's market. I believe it's a great leader's market. I want that to sink in. It's not a buyer's market or a seller's market. And that is great news, because what it means is that the need for you on the part of buyers and sellers is greater than it ever has been. I've not seen a need for real estate agents and great leadership in the real estate market like what we're seeing now in decades. That is great news, because what that means is that your value, your potential value to buyers and sellers, has it gone up or gone down? It's gone up. But you have to know how to present that value. Well, that value ultimately, when we're talking about working with sellers, is to make certain that you have a pricing strategy. So what is the pricing strategy? Well, the pricing strategy is nothing more than a process where we recognize that we've got to price the property correctly, like in any market, but recognize that we're in a sort of market where you see the prices in some stratifications do what? Go down and go up, right? Or remain the same. And so we have to recognize that. So we have to have a process that we follow that says, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it really doesn't matter what is happening in the marketplace, because I have a strategy that if we follow it, it will ensure that you're going to get your home sold in the time that you want for top dollar in today's marketplace. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the pricing strategy? The pricing strategy is nothing more than a 21-day cycle. It's a 21-day cycle. And it could be argued that maybe it's a 30-day cycle, but I would say it's nothing less than a 21-day cycle and no more than a 30-day cycle, regardless of the sort of market that we are in. Very important to recognize that. So it's a strategy that works on a 21 to 30-day cycle. Well, let's just operate on the assumption that it's a 21-day cycle. And the strategy says what? Aubrey, do you remember the strategy?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Did you present it yesterday? Did you listen to them yesterday?
I did.
Okay, so talk about it. How did it go?
Really well.
And speak loud enough so that they can hear you as well.
So I actually presented the home that, of course, I always go over and ask with the comparables, where do you think we should price your home, and go over that with them. And of course, they think the home's worth the Taj Mahal, and they think,
Yeah, every seller does.
yeah,
Every seller believes that the home is worth more than what it is in most cases. Yeah.
So we come to an agreement on price,
Okay.
and I before I even put this in the MLS, I talk to them and I tell them, I sit them down and say, the home, if we'll have, I tell them if we have tons of buyers coming through, which I want you to get that. I want you to get this home sold. Top dollar, you get $1 million, great, my commission goes up.
Right.
So I tell them if the home does not have that many buyers that they're looking at it,
Now, do you say not that many buyers? Do you use specific numbers or
I
do you?
use specific numbers.
Okay, so what numbers do you use? Because I want to make sure that everybody who's listening as well, if they haven't heard the strategy or it's been a while, that they remember what the numbers are, because there are specific numbers that we use in the strategy.
Okay, I did not know that. But I
Okay,
said
cool.
20. I said 20. So if we have had at least 20 showings in a
Okay.
week, that means that we're overpriced.
Okay, now that 20 showings, that's a lot of showings. So you must be in a price point where you're expecting a lot of showings. That's the sort of market that we're
Yeah,
in.
it's a good area. From what I've seen, homes that I show in the area.
Okay.
I mean, at an open house, there were 64 people.
Okay, so because if I had a home that was listed at $2 million,
Yeah, of course.
right, we're not going to see that many.
Yeah,
Now, we're not going to see that many in a month.
that's right.
Right?
That's right.
Okay, so as a note, the point is that the number of showings that we're going to see is going to be dictated by price point. And of course, by the strata that home is within the marketplace, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So a certain number of showings, if we don't have any offers, then of course we're 7 to 10% overpriced.
okay,
If it's quite a few showings, still no offers, we're at least 5 to 7% overpriced. And if
Okay.
there are no, so if we have a lot of showings, over 20, that's the number I said, over 20. So it's, to me, that's a lot.
yeah, it is a lot.
20
In any
showings.
market, that's a lot. of
Yeah,
showings, yeah.
so if we have that, then we're close, but we're still 5 to 7%. Right, so at that point we go.
Okay,
So
and how did they respond to that?
they said, okay, yes, and they said, of course, that's gonna come out of your commission. If I'm like, oh, yeah, I understand that, but if I can't sell the home for top dollar or at all, I won't get any commission. So-
Right. Yeah.
so-
Okay. So let's go over those numbers. So the pricing strategy says that if we have a home that is listed and it's on the market for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we're getting 0 to 3 showings a week. So over the course of 3 weeks, we're getting 0 to how many showings? 9,
Yeah.
right? If we're getting as many as 3 each week, right? 0 to 9 showings over the course of a 21-day period, and we don't have any offers, the pricing strategy says what? It's overpriced. Now, the question is, by how much is it overpriced? We have to take a look at historical numbers, right? And as we've looked at historical numbers, what we find is that if a home gets that number of showings over the course of 21 days, and it doesn't have any offers, it is likely that the home is overpriced by how much? Anybody remember?
Is it the 7 to 10%?
It's usually the 5 to 7%,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Okay.
There's no showing, that's 7 to 10.
If we get no showings, it's usually 7 to 10%.
I guess I'll make them,
Yeah.
I made more aggressive.
And maybe, but it's not exact science, okay? This is, and this is my point. What you have to pay attention to is what's going on in the marketplace, okay? We can take a look at historical averages in terms of, well, what's the average days on market? How many showings is a typical home getting in today's market? Because, listen, are we getting more or less showings today than, say, 2 years ago on a home? We're getting less today. We're getting less. Because how many of you are listing homes where you're getting 50 offers on the home? That was happening 2 years ago and 3 years ago. Yes or yes? So we know we were getting more showings 2 years ago. So the market has shifted. So we have to pay attention to that, right? But what we know is if we're getting 0 to 9 showings and no offers, then what we know is that the home is overpriced by how much? Probably 5 to 7%, right? And if we're getting no showings and no offers, then what we know is that the home is definitely what? Overpriced. Yeah, at least 7, but probably more likely what, Ruby? 10%, 10% overpriced. So then what does that mean? Well, what it means is that if you follow the pricing strategy, it's all about setting expectations. What I've discovered, remind me of your name. Luis. What I've discovered, Luis, is that no matter the relationship that I'm in, it could be an intimate relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be a business relationship, it does not matter. Every relationship has a set of expectations. I have expectations, they have expectations. And if I don't discover the other person's expectations and I don't meet their expectations, how are they going to feel about me?
Not great.
Not great. They're going to be upset. Well, is it true that sellers have a set of expectations when it comes to working with a real estate agent and getting their home sold? Yes, they have all sorts of expectations, particularly as it relates to the home, the price that they're going to get and how long it's going to what? It's going to take to get the home sold. So we've got to make sure we're having those conversations. We've got to make certain that we are, it's called future pacing. We got to future pace them and talk about, okay, this is what can happen. This is likely what's going to happen. And this is how we're going to have to respond based upon those circumstances. In other words, I'm future pacing, setting what? Setting expectations. And the more I set expectations and then therefore meet those expectations, it's more likely that we're going to be in a great what?
Relationship.
In a great relationship. And that's what I'm looking for, a great relationship. Even when it comes time to asking for a price what? See, I can have a great relationship with the seller and still ask for a price reduction. In fact, I can tell you that statistically, it's more likely that I'm going to get a price reduction if I have a great relationship with the seller. And I know I'm going to have a much better relationship with the seller, Ruby, if I am future pacing and every week. See, remember, it's a how many week cycle?
21.
It's a 3-week or 21-day cycle, right? And if I know that, Luis, every week that I pick up the phone and you expect my call and you know what the call is about, it's about me calling you to tell you what I've done in terms of marketing your property, what I've done to prospect, door knocks, pick up the phone and call people, what I've done online in terms of Realtor.com and Zillow and Century 21 and all the other websites that their home is online, and all of the marketing exposure and how the market has responded to that online, the number of views we've had, the number of clicks we've had, and also the number of showings that we've had, as well as what those buyers who've seen the home, what they've said, as well as the buyer's agents, what they've said. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
See, if I take all that information on a weekly basis, I digest it and give it to you as the seller, and we discuss that, then of course, it educates you on what's happening in the marketplace. Because here's the challenge. If I don't have that conversation with them, and I let a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks go by without updating them on what I'm doing from a marketing standpoint and how the market's responding to that, in other words, I'm not controlling the narrative. Who gets to control the narrative? The seller does. And do you think the narrative in terms of the story that they tell is good or bad? It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. Well, my heavens, I listed my home with John. I expected that it was going to sell. It's been a month. I haven't heard from him. I don't think John is doing his what? He's not doing his job. And quite frankly, if I let a month go by and didn't talk about those things, I'm not doing my job. But if every week, Luis, think about it, every week that goes by, I have a conversation about those things. And then at the end of that 21-day cycle, your home's not sold. And we've tallied how many showings we've had or not had. And I say to you, so Luis, based upon what we've seen and what we know, I guess my question for you is, what do you think is preventing your home from selling? What should be the inevitable answer?
Price.
We're overpriced. And it's so much easier to get a price reduction when you do it within the context of that system, those conversations on a weekly basis. But imagine me letting 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks go by, and then picking up the phone and saying, hey, you know, your home obviously is not selling. I think we need to reduce the price of the home. I mean, how are they going to respond to that? How should they respond to that?
Well, what have you been doing?
Exactly. What have you been doing? I don't think you've been doing your job. They have no other conclusion, I don't think, than to say that because you haven't told them that you've done their job, your job. Because the only proof that they have that you've done your job ultimately what? That the house sells. So if that's not happening and you're not updating them, then they create this narrative that is completely inconsistent with the sort of relationship that you want. And that's difficult to get referrals when that's the sort of relationship you have. And one of the best sources of referrals are the current relationships that you have, the listing you just took. You should be asking those people for a referral. when they feel most confident in who you are, because they obviously chose you, right? So they have confidence that you can get their home sold, otherwise they wouldn't have listed with you. Make sense? So the pricing strategy says it's a 21-day cycle. We have a conversation on a weekly basis. We let them know what's been happening in terms of my activities, in terms of marketing exposure, and how the market has responded to that. And the natural conclusion at the end of that process, if the home isn't sold, is that we get a price reduction. Now, here's just a couple of thoughts and any comments that you guys have before we wrap up. Never, ever, 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 emphasis ever, take a price reduction that is not consistent with the amount of money that you know that it needs to be reduced in order to get it sold. Why? Why would I be reluctant? If the seller says, for example, John, I get it, we need to reduce the price of the home, and it's listed at $1 million, $999,000. And they say, okay, let's reduce it. We'll reduce it by $25,000. Do you think that I'm going to give that seller the opportunity to reduce their, and notice what I said, give them an opportunity to reduce it by $25,000? How do you think I would respond to that? Jason's shaking his head no. Are you saying no? Luis, what do you say? Should I let them reduce the home by $25,000? Okay, no. John, what would you say? Why not? Why should I not let the seller do that?
Because you're gonna have another conversation about price. And they're gonna say, well, why reduce it and didn't do anything last time?
Exactly. That's exactly it. See, I already reduced it. I followed your advice. Well, not exactly, because I knew that it would take more than a $25,000 price reduction, or I should have known. And so I let you get away with that, letting you think that you did the right thing when in fact you didn't, right? And then it puts me as an agent in a difficult situation where ultimately the action we took didn't do any good to get your home sold. And I've got to go back to you at some future point, say, hey, we actually have to reduce it again in order to get it sold. You were going to say something.
Well, they won't remember that.
They won't, will they?
They'll be adamant that, oh, we're just doing 25,000.
Yep.
And then you're like, no, that's not gonna work. And then you do it.
Yep.
And then the next time you have, like, you said 25,000.
That's exactly right.
And you're like, no, I
Yep.
didn't.
Well, and they should say that because you let them get away with it. I've had sellers come to me, as we've had the conversation, and I say, well, they're reluctant. I'll say, well, consider it. Get back with me later today. And they'll come back to me and say, yeah, we want to reduce it, but it's an amount that it's not going to cause it to sell. And I would just simply say to them, let's not reduce it. What do you mean? You said we should. No, we shouldn't reduce. No, it doesn't make any sense because that amount of reduction is not going to cause your home to sell. The only reduction we should do is the one that causes your home to sell. Yes or yes?
Yes. Can I add a comment?
Yes, Brenda Lee, go ahead.
Remember, we're professionals. I went to a doctor's appointment and I was talking about my medication. And I said, I really hate taking all this medication. I want to get down on this. I want to reduce. And she looked at me and she goes, well, what would you like to do? In a heartbeat, I lost all confidence in her. I'm like, you're asking me what I want to do with my medication. You're the expert. You're the professional. You need to be telling me. So
Right.
The minute that you turn around and ask your seller, well, what would you like to do? They don't know what they want to do.
Right.
We are the professional. We need to be strong. We need to be confident. And we need to share with them. And it's like if you went to a doctor and you had a broken ankle and you're like, well, I don't want to have surgery. And the doctor says, okay, well, we'll just put a little splint on it and see if it heals. You wouldn't have any confidence in them.
That's right.
It's like you have to be sure and confident. And so when you talk about price reductions, like I've seen this before, I'm the professional. I mean, not that you have to say I'm the professional, but you need to say, give them the sound bites and the experiences that you've already gone through. This isn't going to work. You hired me for my expertise. Please listen.
Well, it goes back to what we said in the very beginning about they need to hear absolute confidence and certainty, especially in today's marketplace. And if you understand the pricing strategy and you stick to it and you know how to present it, they're going to hear certainty, and certainty sells, gang. It's the number one value that you can offer in any market, especially in today's market. You were going to say?
Yeah, when you future page and let them know the pricing strategy and say, okay, it's that time that we need to talk about that pricing strategy that we mentioned in the beginning. And so they go back to that, but not only that, there's so many resources. If you update them weekly, showing time and your key box and everything, it gives you data. Hey, this is how many showings we're having. There's an effect on the price, and this is what's holding us back because the home is beautiful. So what do you think is holding us back? The self-realization, there's so much data now, if you're just able to communicate that with them.
That's the key.
Like when you're done with the showing, does it say and showing, okay, give me feedback? So when you have all that data, you're able to collect that and share that with the sellers where they know it's not just you talking, it's actual data.
Yeah.
This is where we need to be.
It's educational sales. You have to tell them what's going on in the marketplace. The other thing you're going to want to share with them is how many homes were listed and how many homes were sold in the period of time that your home has been on the market since we've listed it. It's about giving people perspective. The greater perspective that they have, in other words, the more educated that they are, the more educated decisions they get to take. Finally, just make certain that in your conversations with them on a weekly basis, that you're tying back the conversation of pricing to their motivation. Remind them why it is that they are listing their home. It's not to list it, it's to sell it. And it's not to sell the home, it's to accomplish whatever they're trying to accomplish by getting their home sold. Maybe it's a job transfer. Maybe they're trying to capture their equity to downsize, upsize. Maybe they're looking to buy an investment property and they want to downsize and buy an investment. Whatever it is, remind them of ultimately what they're trying to accomplish. Make certain that they do not lose a vision of what it is ultimately that this is all about. Because if you can do that, it is more likely that they're going to follow your lead in terms of whatever it's going to take to get the home sold. And it's especially important in this market game. You can do them a very big disservice. Imagine being in a market like we're in, where prices are softening, and we go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, a year without the home selling. And their home is worth less over that period of time than it was in the beginning. That is a huge disservice to them. So, be friendly, but be firm with these conversations. Don't let them get away with not being confronted by this information and ultimately having what could be a difficult conversation. Because that conversation, as difficult as it may seem, is nowhere near as difficult as the conversation of you didn't do your job. You didn't educate us, you didn't inform us. Our home is worth less today than it was 6 months ago, and that is your fault.
So I learned the importance of pricing and 9 or 10 when home prices were going down.
Right.
And I had a seller, I confronted them every week and they didn't want to budge.
Right.
And they told me a couple of times that homes must not be selling. And I said, well, what about those 480 homes that sold last month? We got to be pressured.
Right.
And because of their monthly fee, HOA, whatever, they got sick of paying it. They finally said, you know what? We're gonna lose more money if we don't reduce than if we hang on to this.
Yep. Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to the perspective, John. It's one of the things that you can do is help them understand how much it's costing them to keep the home on the market. If the home stays on the market for 6 months, they're paying a mortgage, they're paying taxes, right? And the market is depreciating. You add all that up, that number can be greater than what the price reduction is. We're in a sort of market where there's a lot of price elasticity, right? And so because of that, we've got to really pay attention to what's happening in the marketplace and educate them. The more educated that they are, the more engaged you are with them in your conversations with them, the greater perspective that they have, the better the relationship you're going to have with them, the more confident that they will feel. And when they feel confident, then ultimately, they're going to follow your lead much more likely than they otherwise would. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, good. Any other thoughts or questions before we wrap it up? Okay. All right. Gang, great job on joining us online. Good to see you there. Brenda Lee, thanks for participating. Let's close.